All right, so today we've got a subscriber and a well and bad water pressure, especially from her hot water heater. So she's not sure what's causing it, and I'm here to try and help. So let's get into this. We're going to start by cleaning out a white bucket so we can see the bottom and the sides. Now I've taken a 1 gallon pitcher and highlighted the 1 gallon mark. So let's fill up 1 gallon of water. So I'm going to use my phone as a timer and see how long it takes to fill up this pitcher of water at several different places around my house. So almost a minute and 10 seconds to get 1 gallon of water from this faucet. And that's because this faucet has a water regulator that's designed to limit the flow of water. I'm going to put 2 more gallons of water in this 5 gallon bucket. I know it's awful bright with the sun shining in, but I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm going to wipe right along the edge of the water and try to dry it off so I can take my permanent marker and I can put 3 gallons. So now we know where the water needs to be to have 3 gallons in it. Let's go to the well and do some measurements there. So I'm at my well, and my well has a spigot that comes straight off of it. What we're going to do is see how long it takes to fill up that bucket with 3 gallons of water from that spigot. There's the hose. There's my spigot. Okay. Let's see if we can do this. So it took 1 minute and 10 seconds to get 1 gallon of water out of that kitchen style faucet that was in the greenhouse. And it took 27 seconds to get 3 gallons of water from the well. That means we're getting 1 gallon of water every 10 seconds. So before we leave here, let's get to this white bucket and why it was important. I want to swirl the water around and see if I can find any sediment at the bottom of the bucket. And you can see a little bit of debris in the very center. And chances are that's from the garden hose I'm using. It's been sitting outside for a long time. But what you're looking for is a bunch of sand and sediment. That would mean that possibly the pipe for your well has got a crack in it and it's allowing dirt to get into the well and into the water and then clogging up your fixtures. Okay, let's take this test on the road. Okay, we're at the front of the house. We've got the spigot and the hose reel, and we've got our bucket set up to do the same test again. If you don't have a large white bucket around your house, you can get one from Lowe's or Home Depot. They're called food grade buckets, but they have white buckets. So it's taken about 47 seconds. Or a flow rate of 1 gallon every 16 seconds. As you move away from the well and encounter bends in the pipe, your flow rate will be reduced. So I think it's an acceptable flow rate loss to go from the pump, which was 10 seconds for a gallon of water, to the front of my house, which was 16 seconds for a gallon of water. So the next thing is to look in the bottom of the bucket to see if there's a bunch of trash or debris in the water. Those will be the things that would clog up your sinks and showers in the house. We'll do the same thing at the kitchen sink. We'll see how long it takes to get a gallon of cold water and a gallon of hot water from the faucet. So the results for the kitchen sink were, it took 1 minute and 8 seconds for a gallon of hot water and 1 minute and 4 seconds for a gallon of cold water. And when we take a close look at the bottom of the pitcher, there doesn't seem to be any trash or debris in it. Of course, normally all that trash and debris would get caught up inside of those flow regulators that limit the amount of water per gallon. So for the bathtub, we ended up with 1 gallon of hot water in 18 seconds and 1 gallon of cold water in 20 seconds. So that's relatively close to what was outside on the front of the house, which was 15 seconds per gallon of water. The best part about doing the bathtub is that there is no flow regulators on a bathtub. If you were to try to take a measurement of how much water came out of the shower head, you might get something very different. and that's because there's a flow regulator in there. Something else is this is a great way to tell if you have a problem with your hot water or your cold water. If you thought something was going on with your water heater and that it was reducing the flow of water through your house, then you should see a noticeable difference when you're seeing how long it takes to get a gallon of water from the hot side and the cold side of the faucets and the bathtub. So our starting point for this bathroom sink faucet would be 1 minute and 13 seconds per gallon of hot water and 1 minute and 13 seconds per gallon of cold water. Then we'll see how fast the water comes out with no flow regulator on the faucet. Doesn't look like there's any debris in the faucet water. The flow regulators can be unscrewed off the end of the faucets. It might take a pair of pliers to get these off, especially the ones in the shower. Wow, and you can see there is a lot of trash inside of this one. Can you see all those little black specks in the sink? That's all debris that made it through the pipes and got stopped at the flow regulator. Once you have these screwed off, you just have to take them apart and clean them out the best you can. This one has a rubber gasket where it screws on, and then it's got a series of small screens. Each one of these little pores is what the water has to pass through, and it slows it down extremely well, which reduces the flow rate from, say, 15 or 20 seconds per gallon to a minute or more per gallon. Each one of those little holes, I'll end up having to take a pin or something through and clean them out, because probably the majority of them have something in them or are clogged up. If you're doing this, you want to pay attention to how it comes apart, so that way you can make sure you put it back together the same way. I have purchased these before in the past and replaced them, but they can be anywhere from $2 or $3 to $20 per piece, because they normally have that metal end that screws onto the faucet that's decorative. This was going back together pretty well until I got to the final screen that was clogged up. And you can see here, sorry for my thumb looking so rough, but see all those little holes that are clogged up? I'll take that pin and I'll push through each one of those holes until I get this little screen cleaned out. So if you did some remodeling or some work on your plumbing system, it's possible that you could get some trash in the lines, and then when you finally got done, you would need to do this to each one of your faucets and the showers. If you've got a crack in that main pipe on your well and you've got dirt coming in, I don't know of anything you can do except replace the well. It would be impractical to try to clean all of your faucets and shower heads every couple of days. Okay, let's get back to the flow testing, and we'll see how much water we can get through the hot and cold lines of this faucet without the flow regulator. Okay, we've got a gallon of hot water in 38 seconds and a gallon of cold water in 40 seconds. Okay, we've cleaned out the flow regulator. Let's see what our times are now. It took 56 seconds to get a gallon of the cold and hot water. So that's a big improvement over a minute and 13 seconds for the hot and cold water before we clean the flow regulator. So this is from my shower, and you can see it's got a screen that goes in here. I'm going to have to replace this torn rubber gasket. And you can see on top of this screen, can you see all this material? Most of the debris that was clogging the screen came off when I scraped it with my fingernail. Sometimes you can find these for garden hoses to help sand and sediment from getting into things. So you saw that piece of paper with all of our information. Let's see what that information tells us. So we had a person that was having a problem with water pressure, and they thought their hot water heater was messed up and they couldn't figure out how to fix it. We measured how long it took to get a gallon of water out of several different places in our house. So the kitchen sink, it took 1 minute and 8 seconds for a hot water and 1 minute and 4 seconds for cold. In the bathroom, it took 1 minute and 13 seconds to get a gallon of hot and a gallon of cold water. In the bathtub, it took 18 seconds for a gallon of hot water and 21 seconds for a gallon of cold water. Now, if you do this test, you should be able to tell fairly quickly, do you actually have a problem with water pressure, or do you actually have a problem with something in the hot water line? You should see problems. You should see that it takes a lot longer to get a gallon of hot water out of a faucet or the bathtub or the shower than it would be to get a gallon of cold water. The next thing we did was try to figure out what could be causing something to give us a low flow rate. Well, sediment will do it right off the bat. Now, when we were looking in the bottom of the white bucket, we didn't really see that much dirt or debris. And the same way when we're inside, we didn't see much dirt or debris. You're probably not going to see much out of the faucets, but you should see something out of the bathtub. If you've got a crack in that pipe for your well and you're getting sand in the line, you should see something coming out in the toilets, out of the bathtub. The shower head up top has a screen in it and a filter to regulate the gallons per minute that'll come out. So it's probably catching all the trash. But the bathtub has nothing. So the last thing to do would be to talk about that bathroom sink where we actually cleaned out the flow regulator and you could see all the dirt and debris in it. It turned out that it took 1 minute and 13 seconds to get a gallon of water out of that for the hot and the cold water. And once we cleaned it, it only took 56 seconds to get a gallon of hot and cold water. That means we reduced the time by 1/5, 17 seconds, and that's a big improvement. Well, this is not going to do anything to solve your problem. It's not going to clean out the flow regulators for you. It's not going to fix the well. It's not going to fix the water heater. But what it might do is it might actually tell you where the problem is, because that's the hardest part, trying to figure out where the problem is. Well, I hope this helps. Leave some comments. Let me know if it did or didn't. And like always, like, subscribe, check out my playlist, and I'll see you in the next video.